Um, so things started to get worse, like way worse, going from 16, 17 years old into my 20s, and in my 20s it got like terrible. So, like I said, first time I went to therapy, that sort of struck out. I didn't stick with it. I still had these negative feelings and suicidal ideations that were becoming stronger. Everyone has an internal voice, and I wouldn't say that I heard voices, but I would get these moments where I would just feel like this energy that like I couldn't contain, and like the more I would get worked up on that energy, I would start to have like these internal debates with myself about how horrible of a person I was and why I deserved to die, and and that I was the sole reason that people didn't like me, and the reason I didn't have a girlfriend, and just all of this horrible stuff that I don't feel like I was willingly trying to tell myself, but I just became fixated on this idea that I was a piece of shit, and so after high school, when this started to get bad at the tail end of it, I went to college, a very very good college, and I had a $20,000 scholarship, and I pissed it away. I wouldn't leave my dorm room except to like get food from the food court, which I was infamous for. I gained 50 pounds, but even though I was pursuing a technical expertise at this particular school that like really fascinated me, like I had no interest in going to class. I just slept all day, you know. I remember that very vividly. I only lasted there for like a couple of months. Now I know that likely I was coming down from a manic phase, and that probably was the subsequent depressive phase. So yeah, went back home, just became a huge pothead. Wasn't really relating to people outside of like my core group of two or three friends, like from high school. Um, and still with the suicidal ideations. I would get like so tense, like I was working at the movie theater at the time. One of my jobs was like to tear tickets at the podium, and I could barely do it because like I would get that sort of crazy energy in my body that would make me want to crawl out of my skin, and these like racing thoughts. But like my job was to stand still in like this one spot. Like I couldn't even sit down. I had to stand in this one spot with all this craziness going on in my head. The last thing I wanted to do was stand still, and yet that was my job. I would get like so tense that it physically would hurt. Like my chest would hurt. Like I could feel almost I could feel like I was tensing my muscles so much that like I was like causing like stress to like the bone right here. It was awful. Um, Anyone who would ever touch me would comment on how like I perpetually was like one of the most tensed up people that they had ever encountered, and even when they said that, like I couldn't relax. I just was in a constant state of like just all of the time, just like tight, and just everything in my body just like stressed, and just having like the craziest thoughts, and just being as uncomfortable and as isolated as possible, to the point where it just took one thing in my life to sort of set me off. There's this like quote, like concerning the Joker and Batman from Alan Moore's take on him. Uh, all it takes is one bad day to reduce the sanest man alive to lunacy. That's how far the world is from where I am. Just one bad day. One bad day. Like, I have been to the crisis center a couple of times, but, like, I don't know, I don't want to sound like a manipulator, but, like, I was, like, good at saying, like, what the doctors wanted to hear so that they would let me out. Um, but 24, I think I was. It's the first time I ended up like in the hospital, like in inpatient, and even though I had been in and out of therapy and in and out of the crisis center, one of the times like I was gonna jump into the river that's in my city, and like I walked all the way down to where it was and called the suicide hotline. Went to the crisis center and still somehow managed to talk myself out of that situation. Like my crazy brain that caused all this awkwardness and weirdness made me like really bright and perceptive. And especially when I was in my 20s, like I had a good feel for it. Allowed me to manipulate people and situations more than I should have been able to, you know. I just gained this sort of level of awareness that I don't think most people have, and I don't think that a lot of bipolar people even have it. Especially, I mean, they usually do get it eventually, but I think in the beginning they just sort of get kept caught up and washed away in the symptoms, which is why when they have suicidal ideations and things like that, it's really dangerous. But like for me, I don't want to say that it wasn't dangerous that I was having the suicidal ideations and had made my hair is terrible. These half-hearted sort of attempts to carry out those thoughts. I still had like this level of awareness that like what was going on was like not correct. That saved me, even though I was having all of these crazy symptoms that may have driven other people to do something regrettable. So, as is like typical, um, so my eventual psychotic collapse came from a girl. Um, this person was a friend who I had known for many years, and they screwed me over in a very major personal way.